everybody, I'm Melinda Gallant, and I am in a mysterious place today in the lower level. And I'm not going to tell you what lower level, but that's where I am. So come along, let's have another Cape Conversations. Hi, everybody. Oh my gosh, I'm in the lower level of the new town hall against a teal wall because they don't have any artwork up yet. And I am with the wonderful Leanne Drake. Leanne, how are you?
Hi, it's lovely to be here.
Oh my gosh, welcome to Cape Conversations. This is our first
Thank you.
conversation.
Yes,
Literally, it is.
absolutely. It is our first
It
conversation.
is,
Yes,
it
thank you for
is.
having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited to get to know you. So, first of all, tell me what you do. What's your title? What do you do in the basement of the town hall?
Sure, I
The
am.
lower level.
Yes, the lower level for us cellar dwellers down
Yeah.
here. I am the Director of Community Development,
Uh-huh.
which is a relatively new position
Mhm.
that the Select Board created in the summer.
Wow.
And previously, I was the town planner, and before that, the assistant town planner. But in my current role, I oversee the operations of all the regulatory departments.
Oh, nice.
So planning, zoning, building department, natural resources, and the health department.
And do you have to go to all those meetings?
I'm currently going to all the planning board meetings,
Mhm.
zoning board and historic, but we
Mhm.
have hired a new town planner, so that will be his role. I
Yay.
will be more so into the long range planning for the town
I
and
see.
less at the forefront of permitting.
So, will you deal with all the economic development in the town, like future economic development, etc.?
Yes, yep. So economic development, preservation, conservation, any of the long range planning efforts, I'll be spearheading those.
Oh, excellent. So, tell me about yourself because I do catch just a teeny lilt of an accent.
Yes, I'm originally from Ireland,
Yeah.
and I emigrated here about 9 years ago.
Mhm.
Um, so I grew up in Ireland. I have all my educations in Ireland. I grew up on the West Coast
Mhm.
and lived on the East Coast for a little bit too, as a younger adult, and then emigrated here, married to a Cape Codder, and
Oh my gosh.
have our little son who's 2 years old now,
And what's his name?
Tig.
Tyke?
Yes, which is a old school Irish name and
Right.
means the poet.
Oh, there you
Yes, it
go.
was my great grandfather's name. So
So he's going to be very cultural.
yes, he's 2 and he's been to Ireland twice already.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. So, um, so tell me, you said you got all your education in Ireland. Is going to get a did you become a town planner in Ireland or what's your degree in?
Yeah, so my bachelor's degree is in English and geography,
Uh-huh.
and I minored in psychology, and then my master's degree is in urban and regional planning.
Oh, okay.
So I did go to school for town planning. That was a 2.5 year master's program. Of course, it's different in the US, and Massachusetts specifically is very unique for land use with some of the interesting ways the laws are written.
Mhm,
So when I first emigrated here, I actually worked for the town of Chatham
mhm,
for about 18 months to 2 years,
mhm.
which was wonderful. And I learned an awful lot about Massachusetts land use law. But some of the practices of placemaking are generally the same,
Sure.
no matter where you are in the world. We did case studies in Germany, Texas, and Barcelona as part of the master's program.
Oh,
It's
wow.
interesting to see the similarities and the differences.
Now, are you familiar with Mashpee Commons next door?
I am, yeah.
Well, that's the new urbanism.
Yes.
Right, right, which my former boss years ago, I was the manager there, for years, 16 actually. Um, and I mean, he was all about the new urbanism, but boy, I'll tell you, he's had a fight to put a town where a town wasn't.
Yeah.
And I'm sure here there must be similarities between growth and non-growth.
Yeah.
There are those that want no growth,
Yes.
um, which is difficult, especially if you go, well, you want to know why your taxes went up? It's because we have no businesses.
Yeah.
But that's hard for people to accept, I think.
Mhm.
So how do you deal with that or?
Yeah, deal with that on a pretty regular basis.
Yeah,
The way I always like to think of it is, these jobs for town government, in Ireland, you're called a civil servant. I mean, that's what you do. You're here to protect the public and here
right.
to get to where the public would like you to go. So we've done a lot of visioning sessions about where we should go and development wise for the town,
Mhm.
what we should preserve, conserve, and where we should develop. And then what does that development look like? Is it something that's a Mashpee Common style? Is it something that's more sandwich oriented?
Right,
What type of density are we comfortable with?
right.
And where do we want our town to be? Because the feedback I get most of all is, I love this town and I don't want major change. We need
Right.
you to protect the status quo with
Right.
mild development of mom and pop shops, or maybe
Right.
some type of like scientific organization coming in.
Is
But
that
that's
for the
general feedback. Yeah.
is that just for the village area itself?
No, pretty much for the full town. We did a visioning workshop in South Sandwich Village, which, AKA the Golden Triangle.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I always laugh at the name of that. Sounds
right?
like something from some romance novel. We
Yeah.
won't go there, but it does.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, so when we look at that area, a lot of people said, Forestdale and South Sandwich has a lot of farming and fishing routes, and
Right.
they feel we're getting way too far into development, and that's not a great area for it. And do we really want the town to go in that direction? So
Mhm.
we listen to all that feedback, take it in, and think of, well, how can we get a little bit more development in an area that it wouldn't necessarily impact tax rates, but would help people that live in the town.
Mhm.
Um, but then also we want to make sure we have that balance of we're not going too far. So right now, I mean, that area, we have a lot of recreational
Oh, we sure
activities
do.
happening.
Yeah.
It's pretty much our recreational hub, which is an economic driver in and of itself. So I
Mhm.
mean, we try to think outside the box of, maybe it's not just standard brick and mortar commercial development, but maybe there's attractions that would bring people to town,
Sure.
that would, help our local business community, but then also be respectful of people who live here and don't want an urban setting.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Um, well, urban here is not like urban Boston, though.
Correct.
It's not the same.
No, no.
I mean, we have, height restrictions
Mhm.
on buildings, and we do here in town,
We
correct?
do. Yep.
Um, and that's including homes, is that correct
Yes.
too?
35
Yeah,
feet. Yep.
35 feet, okay.
Yep.
Because I live in Town Neck,
Yep.
and there's some new homes down there, and I go, "Wow, that's really tall,"
Yeah.
but it's not over 35 feet, I guess.
Well, it may be over 35 feet if it's in a floodplain, because it's
Oh,
taken
because
from
they
the top of the stilts. Yeah.
okay, so
Yeah.
it's
So
yeah,
you could
some of
be
those
higher
are
in
on
the air.
stilts, that must be it then.
Yes. Yeah.
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 Well, see, those are things that people don't know, though,
Yes.
you
Yeah.
know? Thank
Yeah.
you for telling me. Um, so what else do you have on your docket, on your plate that you're doing right now? What are the big things you're looking at?
Well, currently we're revising zoning.
Mhm.
So we have zoning changes coming up for annual town meeting. We're revising our accessory dwelling unit bylaw. The state came out with new regulations.
Mhm.
They made
So that you can have one.
well, we always allowed them.
Uh-huh.
We did a really great bylaw with the planning board back in 2020, 2021, that time
Mhm.
frame. And it worked really, really well. And then the state came out with the Affordable Homes Act in August
Oh,
that
yeah,
Governor
yeah,
Healy signed into law.
yeah.
So they made accessory dwelling units a protected class, which means that we can't unreasonably regulate. So some of the things that we had in there, we're no longer able to enforce, like
Mhm.
owner occupancy requirements,
Mhm.
or there was we had regulated by lot size, and we're no longer able to regulate by lot size. So basically, every lot in Sandwich is able to have an accessory
Right.
dwelling unit. So
Is
we're
there
going
a
through
size
that
limit?
process. It's 900 square feet gross floor area, or half the size of the floor area of the existing dwelling,
Mm,
whichever one's smaller.
I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
so they're supposed to be small
Right.
accessory units to the main structure, and then there's no restrictions on who lives there, or the income, or anything like that. But they're intended for year-round use and not for short-term rental use.
Right. So,
Yeah,
in other words, you can do this and think of it as a summer cottage where you rent it
correct.
out every week or
Yes,
right.
exactly. The intent is for year-round rentals.
Got
Try to diversify the housing stock that we
right.
have here, and this was blanket across Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Um,
So, I know there was, I know we're doing the new, on, God, Water Street,
mhm.
the residences
Yes.
at Wing
Yeah.
School. Yeah. Did you have a part of that or?
Yeah, so the previous director of planning, Ralph Attacco,
Mhm.
he spearheaded the project, but
Mhm.
I would have helped with the paperwork in
Yeah.
the back end of the section,
Yeah.
for the RFP that we put out, speaking with different people to let them know that it was there, and this is what
Yeah.
we were disposing of the property,
Right.
and trying to get the best use possible in there.
Sure.
Yeah.
And they're coming right along, I guess. Have you
They
been in? Have you seen them? Have
I
you been
have
able to?
not, but I have seen videos and pictures from the building department when they do
Oh,
their
nice.
inspections. And they do say on the older side of the building, if you go to the top floor and look out, you have an ocean view.
Oh my gosh. Now, are those apartments
Stunning.
in the old building too?
There are apartments in the old building as well as a community space.
Oh,
So the main section has a community space, and then the towards the side, kind of set back from the road, is
Which was classrooms in the old days.
yes, yeah,
'Cause my kids went there.
yeah, yeah. They are apartments, so there'll be 38 units in this first phase.
And they're all either efficiencies or one bedroom, is that correct?
There's studios 1 and 2 bed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there are 2 bedrooms
There are 2
in this
bedroom
first
units.
phase?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't realize that. So are they in the old building or in the new part?
I believe
Yeah?
the 2 beds are in the new part.
Ah, I see.
Yes, yeah.
I see. Because what they're advertising, that what they're talking about right now is studio and 1 bedrooms. They're not talking about the 2 bedrooms yet. So,
Okay.
because I've just been, not that I'm moving there, but
Yeah,
it's
you've been
just,
looking at us.
yeah, yeah, well, of course.
Yeah.
I find if I were a person, I'd want to live in the old part
Oh, yes.
because you'd have to have high ceilings in
Yes,
there.
yeah.
There must be, I mean, and the windows are gorgeous.
Absolutely beautiful.
They did a really nice job in
Yeah.
renovating that part with the black windows. It was
Yeah.
really good.
It does look
So,
really good.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely an asset to the town for sure.
Yeah, and a great location because for people
Oh,
that
God.
don't want to be car based or dominant,
Right.
they can walk. You
Right,
know?
right, which is terrific, absolutely
Yeah.
terrific. So what other housing project, I mean, are you in the housing project? You know about the housing projects. You probably have to deal with them, correct? Or
I do. Our biggest drawback to creating affordable housing right now is our wastewater issues.
right,
It's hard to get the density that you would really need,
right.
especially when we look at available town lands that we could potentially at some point maybe auction off for affordable housing purposes. We almost need wastewater to be in place for that to be practicable.
Unless somebody would put in their own wastewater system for the units, right?
Yes, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And that's very great expense.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
So right now we're focusing on our wastewater efforts. I'm starting to look at zoning to put in place.
Mhm.
We want to make sure that we're controlling the development and it doesn't control us when
Right.
water comes
That's a
online.
good thought.
Yeah, so we're undertaking that process. I just got a grant from the Cape Cod Commission.
Oh, nice.
So we'll be working with them to vision further along from our 2019 visioning project for
Mhm.
South Sandwich Village, and then a little bit of the village core to see is there an area where we could get in, a little bit more top of shop zoning, more apartment use
Right.
in that area.
Right.
We have a lot of vacant commercial development in town,
Mhm.
so we're not necessarily looking to include more commercial in those areas, but to utilize the space that currently exists and then maybe have more of a residential feel on top of it.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
So, if that would happen, when you said top of shop, that's what they did at Mashpee Commons. They built it like a downtown, like downtowns used to be.
Yes.
They used to have shops below and lived above.
Mhm. And we see that land use pattern today in the village core. And then it was all changed kind of in the late 80s or 90s to not allow this use anymore,
Right.
which historically was always allowed.
Right.
And unfortunately, there's some people that didn't rent out the top of the apartment they once
Right.
had. And under zoning, if you don't rent out a non-conforming use for 5 years, you lose that use.
Oh my gosh.
So there's people then that weren't able to reestablish the use
Right.
in existing buildings. And it just seems like a no-brainer to
Yeah.
look at bringing back something that
Certainly.
would work well, but wouldn't cause, a lot of new density or new growth.
So where do you see Sandwich going then with all of this? Do you have, in your mind, do you have a vision?
Not my vision changes depending on,
Yeah.
the information that's provided. So especially when we're at the start, I always think of a town planner and even what I do, we're a facilitator of processes. So it's not my vision and it should never be about me.
It's
It's
the
always
community.
about the community.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when someone asks that question, I can go off of what was previously
Mhm.
said in visioning sessions and the direction we got at that time. But as we're starting to go through this process, and we'll see it more in the summer, in the fall, and we'll be holding more public hearings with the community and more surveys and asking, the type of development they'd really want to see. That kind of frames our vision for then the possibilities of what we could do.
Oh, excellent. Well, it makes sense.
Yes.
I mean, it shouldn't be, you are a queen, but you're not the queen of that.
Thank you.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So it's not your edict, but I love the sense of community that you're bringing to the position, because that's what it is all about. It is all about community, and I've mentioned this before, and so my people who watch in the middle of the night this show, as I always say, they're watching in the middle of the night because they can't sleep. Um, that the part with Airbnbs, not that there's anything wrong with them if they, if they're not, loading in 25,000 college kids onto their property.
Yeah.
Usually it's a fine thing. It's families, it's all good. But you lose that sense of community. And what your job is to kind of think about the community in general, what's going to bring it to along with obviously the town planner is the process for that.
Yeah, and one of the things we're bringing up at this town meeting is a general bylaw change for short-term rental regulations. The state building code changed to the 10th edition, January 1st. They now require annual inspections of short-term rentals for safety,
That's great.
which is great. It is really needed. But then also we thought it was a really good time to start looking at regulations for short-term rentals and to have a little bit of enforcement in there in case you have a repeat offender of, hosting weddings at their short-term rental or excessive partying, that, there's a process to say, what, if you're not going to rent to people that are able to respect the neighborhood, then you're going to have your certificate revoked. So we kind of just have it's not, I shouldn't say it's not very restrictive right now, but it's the first iteration of the bylaw. So as we look forward, we're no weddings, no parties, no staying in RVs, parking on site, not excessive noise and litter and things like that. And then an enforcement at the end if someone can't meet the regulations.
My daughter looked at my daughter and son-in-law looked at purchasing a second home in Vermont. And it was great, except they couldn't rent it out. They have number of weeks for rent restrictions. So try to say that fast, rent restrictions. So they could only rent it out. I mean, they were only allowed to rent it out X number of weeks in a year. And when you're doing a second home, unless you have a lot of money and you're not paying cash for that second home, you really need that income.
Of course, to offset.
Right. So they ended up in New Hampshire. But has the town talked about anything like that, or?
We haven't. I mean, Cape Cod has traditionally been a vacation place. I think Sandwich, we have the most year-round living. We're seeing a lot more of short-term rentals kind of coming in, and it's just about finding the balance. So I think, between doing the short-term rental regulations to try to just keep peace in neighborhoods, but still allow the existing use to occur, and then also with the accessory dwelling units, if people want to add rental space to their property, they can and rent it year-round. We're just trying to, there has to be a little bit of everything, and allow a little bit of everything.
And that would be great for people who have kids who are grown up, who want to come back to the Cape, maybe get a job on the Cape, whatever it may be, and have a place to live, because how do you afford housing?
Exactly. And that's what we've seen. So our original ADU bylaw that we adopted in, I think it was 2021, that's what we've seen for. We've seen, between 5 to 30 permitted a year. And for the most part, it's people wanting to age in place. They move into the new unit, the new accessory dwelling unit, and their family move back with their grandkids. They occupy the main dwelling. And we've seen that more and more, and with remote work and, expanding opportunities on the Cape, where especially Sandwich can be a little bit of a commuter town with Boston. That's typically what we're seeing.
Well, that makes so much sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I always tease, my son lives in Falmouth. And he has 2 large sheds. He lives on the conservation area in Falmouth. So behind him is all conservation, which is wonderful. I mean, it's all woods. It's great. But he also has 2 very large sheds. And I keep telling him, he's going to have to turn one of those in for myself and my husband to turn it in for me so we can live there. Down the road 100 years. But it's such a conundrum right now. I mean, I think every community, not only on Cape Cod, but across the country, is dealing with the same thing. Are you reading about that? Do you hear about that with
absolutely.
your other?
Yes, yeah. Definitely this region of America is dealing with the housing crisis. They are, same thing in Europe. I mean, in Ireland, they're dealing with a huge housing crisis.
Is that right?
Absolutely. Just the price of everything is so expensive. And then the wages don't match what you would need to have to buy. I think it could really change the economics of our regions we're still seeing the effects of that. So it's challenging. And even when you do bylaws like this and you think of ADUs, the cost to construct an ADU right now is, depending on what you want, $250 to $350. I mean, that's expensive. That used to be the cost of an actual single family home.
Well, now they're talking about prefab ones, though. Have you heard about those?
I have. So only some are state certified. So that is
Right,
if you're going the prefab route, you should make sure that it's Massachusetts state certified
and
because they come ready to
right,
go.
right,
So some of those initial building permit inspections are kind of waived because it
right.
is state certified that this is safe.
I always like looking at them because I always think they have a unique way of doing storage,
Yes.
which
Yes.
is always just intriguing to me. I have no clue
Absolutely.
why,
Yes.
but it's on TikTok and I'm looking at these people building these homes and they
Yes.
have storage here and there, and it's always
It's
I
like
always go, why didn't
IKEA
I think of that?
inspired.
Yes.
Yes.
Why didn't I think of that?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
anyway, is there a big difference between Europe or Ireland and the United States in their regulations and how we do those kinds of things?
Yeah, I guess each country is quite different. I think culturally they're very different, and things that
Mhm.
people care about here is vastly different to sometimes what they care about at home.
Right.
This is a much more grassroots process in America. I really, especially in Massachusetts, I really like that the form of government is really interesting. Going to
Right.
my first town meeting was very
I
interesting.
can imagine.
There's a lot more leeway in Ireland for planners to make decisions outside of a public process. So the job may be slightly easier in that respect, but then you don't always get as good a product because you're
Right.
you're not getting that real, grassroots community effort as to where this should go. So there's differences there, and then the way land use works in Ireland is very different. It's all Oscuelga, so it's
It's all what?
Oscuelga Irish, our
Oh,
mother tongue. So
uh,
it's interesting the way it's written.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's would you say more lenient or
No, so since the Celtic Tiger, they've gotten very, very strict on development there.
Mhm.
Here, every town in Massachusetts has a zoning board of appeals. In Ireland, we have one appeals board out of
Oh,
Dublin
wow.
on Board Clonala, and everything goes through them. So you could be a very long time waiting for an
Right.
appeal.
Wow.
Um, yeah, there's planning permission for the development of housing that you would have to submit to your council.
And you can't tear things down there too much, can you?
No, not too much. Yeah,
Mhm.
especially if there's anything historic nature about it.
Right.
They're very careful on the rural development of
Mm.
things. There's a lot of regulations there. If you were to try to build in a rural area, you have to show that you've community ties, that your family has been part of the parish, that you
Yeah.
went to school there. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
they now have a new section for housing in need, and it's people that are first-time home buyers. They make it a little bit easier for them just because of the crisis we've had.
So what you're telling me is actually it's a little bit it may be more restrictive here, but it's a little easier in a way.
I'd say they both have
Yeah.
easier paths on certain things and then
Yeah.
stricter on others. I
I
think
see.
it's just the preference of
Yeah.
what to conserve and preserve and what to build on is
Yeah.
slightly different in both areas.
And how do you feel about conserving? I would imagine. Yeah, I mean, here you're working in the oldest town on the Cape.
Yes,
Do you
yes.
live in town or do you
I
live
do. Yeah, I'm a
Oh,
sandwich resident
oh my
also. Yeah.
gosh, it's great.
Yeah.
Um, and it must be just so interesting because everything that goes on here has ties to the past.
Absolutely.
I mean, what was this land used for before and all of that? So do
Yeah.
you take that all into consideration?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I grew up in such a beautiful place, and Ireland is beloved by so many.
And where'd you grow up?
In Galway, which is a medieval town, and the
Yeah, it's
shopping mall and a
gorgeous.
medieval castle, and so you grow up with a lot of history. And then
Yeah,
my husband was from here, and I moved here, and I just was this place is so special, and
yeah,
there's so many wonderful
right.
things about this place, and I fell in love with it and have been here for 9 years.
Yeah,
And you delve in and learn the history of this area, and it's so you do want to preserve it. You want to make sure that you're not going to put forward something that's going to ruin the character or destroy the past, especially
right,
when we look at the historic district or certain areas of town. And each area of town is special and unique and deserves to be treated that way. So,
right.
so yeah, I take all this very seriously when we start to think of things. We always say, well, okay, if we do this, what's the unintended consequence?
Oh,
Yeah,
that's very good.
what could potentially happen that we didn't intend to happen?
Right, right.
And we try to vet all those out as best we can.
Well, the new boardwalk, I'm going to tell you right now, the unintended consequence is it is now on every list. Fodors, everyone. The first thing you have to see when you come to Cape Cod is the Sandwich Boardwalk.
So it's packed.
It's packed all the time and I can't find a parking space.
Yes. Absolutely. Yes.
I think we should book concessions down there actually.
Yeah.
Food trucks or something and take a piece of the action because they make a lot of money.
Yeah.
In fact, I've heard a funny story. I'm a JP
Mhm.
and Justice of the Peace, so I marry
Yes.
people.
Yeah.
And I had a funny story. I met with a couple last night, and they were telling me they had a blind date at the boardwalk. They decided, public place, they would meet at the boardwalk.
Yes.
Well, one was on one side and one was on the other. So they ended up meeting in the middle.
Aw.
And they broke up for a little while. And when they got back together, they met in the middle again. So
That's wonderful.
the boardwalk has a lot of, wonderful stories like that.
Yes.
But it's too popular, I've decided. I'd like it to go back to the way it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, so it just seems like you've just slid right in and fit perfectly.
Oh, well, thank you. It does feel like home now. Yeah.
Does it? Oh,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Good for you. So coming up, what's any big thing in town coming up? Town meeting?
Just town meeting.
Yeah?
Meeting. Yep. 3 articles I'll be presenting on.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I think that's the biggest thing on the horizon right now. And then
Right.
during the summer, we'll probably go through some more zoning efforts maybe.
Excellent.
We've
Excellent.
got some fun stuff to do with stormwater.
Yay! Well, I used to have to deal with wastewater when I worked at Mashpee Commons.
Yeah.
So all the stuff coming up about wastewater, I get a chuckle over because people do not understand wastewater, why we need it. I think they just think we'll just throw it out the window like they used to do in the medieval
Exactly.
times. So it doesn't happen that way anymore.
No.
So anyway, well, I just want to say thank you. It was lovely. It's lovely to meet you, and I hope we meet again. I hope
Absolutely.
our
Yes.
paths cross.
Yes.
If there's anything I can do for you, because I like to do all the theater and those kinds of things. If you decide you want to do a play on wastewater, let's figure it out.
That sounds great.
Oh, I got a great title, but I cannot say it at the moment. Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Wow, Leanne Drake. Oh my gosh. She is so terrific. And she's the community development director here in Sandwich. Oh my gosh. And she's an Irish lass, she is, and she's married to a wonderful Cape Cod boy, and they have a small boy together. Isn't that terrific? We are so lucky to have her here. And she's doing great works with the town of Sandwich and regulations and all the things coming up at town meeting. And she's going to even be presenting there. This is so exciting. I can't wait to go to town meeting and see her do her presentations. So I'm glad you joined me today, and come along next time for another Cape Conversations.